Dun, 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 dun.
As I said in looking at the announcement trailer, that two sequels for 2018's Halloween were pretty quickly incoming. I have nothing but anticipation for this new story coming forward. I loved Halloween of 2018. A little more so than I can appreciate 1978, even though I had some content points of it where I'm like, I didn't exactly want to see everything here, especially that opening scene of 1978's Halloween. I absolutely appreciate the heck out of the new movie. It's such a good story, really delivered. And I watched them back to back, which probably helped. But man, I love that movie. And really, it's one of my biggest regrets, as I said in this channel, if I didn't cover the trailers for it. I had seen them. I just wasn't covering horror trailers, or really any trailers mainly outside of like big franchise movies, with some exception. But I didn't cover Halloween. And I really wish I had. Because even when seeing the trailers, after the fact and I wasn't covering them, boy, the trailers were good. They were really, really good. But in watching the movie, and the time since, my respect for this property just grows. On and on and on. It's one of actually the biggest pities that the movie had to be delayed, and I get why. I have mad respect for Blumhouse, by the way, as a studio, so that, of course, plays a part, but the movie was just so good on its own. But the fact that it was delayed, it was one of probably the highest quality projects I was looking forward to at its specified release date, but because of COVID, it got delayed a year. Really bummed me out when the announcement came out. But in the time since, actually in the time in 2020, I've come to respect that film more. Not just on the basis that it's a good horror film, but specifically in how realistic it is. Which is really interesting, because I'm sitting there thinking, Halloween, no one would want to see like the barbarity of Michael Myers, played out real life. But this film had some very interesting things to say about, and in regards to the portrayal of PTSD, I found it to be extremely realistic, like really grounded in reality. And I really respect this movie for that. Laurie Strode, there's a specific sequence I can think of in the movie. It was in the diner, I think, where she's meeting her family. And of course, we get the treatment of, she's been preparing for this night for 40 years. She knew it was coming. But then she's having to rationalize that with her family, who's like, you're in this horrible state of being right now. I think they came to realize in that movie, like, no, she has every reason to be. Like, Michael Myers is a frightening figure. But the way that Jamie Lee Curtis, who I love as an actress, by the way, played that scene in the diner, it just occurred to me like how well established their portrayal of PTSD is. I've never been able to forget that sense. I've never been able to forget that scene specifically. But the rest of the movie as well, in terms of the way it's made and the entire story, especially the end sequence with like how the references, especially the 1978 cut through the ending where she's like, pops out the back, she's like, Happy Halloween. I love that moment so much. Really, really impacted me. As I said, it's the realism that gets me. And something that happened in 2020, the one thing I didn't expect, and I really think, again, this makes the project, just so appreciative. I haven't seen many other YouTubers pick this up, which you might be hearing this from me from the first time. Maybe someone did, and I just haven't seen it yet. Another way this movie has been realistic. We actually had a live-action Halloween play out. Horrifically speaking, because no one would want to see this happen in real life, but the fact that, again, it's so relevant to, that it really did almost kind of, I'm trying to find the right word to use, but there's a certain situation that happened in real life. Some of you might not have heard about this. I don't know how much news coverage it got, but I did catch wind of it. There was a ordeal. I believe it was in, I haven't looked into the case too much other than some of the broader facts I know. There was a video that went somewhat viral. Got about 8,000 views from a lady, I forget her name, but she was in a Washington state. She put a video up in the midst of like 2018. No, not 2020. It was like April 2020, I think. It was a really harrowing account. Now, some of you might not have seen this video. I don't know if it's public or not. I know the reason I'm bringing it up because it's the press conferences. And like, well, might not be a public figure. Well, the press conference is on YouTube and you can watch it for yourself. Based on some decisions that have been made in the midst of, I believe it was attributed to COVID. And it wasn't just Washington State that does. I remember a lot of other states doing this with their prison populations. This made no sense to me, by the way, of like, I get, COVID was a horrible thing. I'm not trying to delegitimize that at all. But do you really think putting prisoners that have been arrested for some pretty horrific crimes, that putting them on the street is going to, help society? This is apparently what they did. And again, I'm just remembering the kind of this in broad strokes. I don't know all the nuances to what the decision was. But from the sounds of the impression I got from this woman, And she had really a story I've not been able to forget since. She talked about how years earlier in her life, her mom tragically passed away from a certain, I believe it was like, I think she said it was a shooting that happened. They did arrest the bad guy, but according to her, this was clearly traumatic for her because she had lost her mom, which I imagine that would be for anybody. Anybody in that situation, it'd be horrible. Especially since she was talking about, well, my kids now have to grow up without their grandma. That was really sad. Dad's still alive, but was injured in the process. But according to her account from that video, one thing he had said, in the midst of being arrested, I guess, was that if he ever got out of prison, he would finish the job, essentially implying he would go after her dad that he had injured. That'd be horrible to tell anybody, but to live with that experience, you see the parallel I'm making here? So, years later, the Washington state government decides we're going to put prisoners out on the streets because we're afraid of, COVID being spread and whatnot. Why? Again, that's the idea. I have no idea. You think they'd be able to, this is the government. I mean, they've got so much money and so much power. You think they could make some sort of cordoned off prison? I mean, don't we have, solitary? I know, solitary is, ideally not every prisoner would be there, but in this situation, you think they would take certain precautions, not put them out in the streets. Well, this woman put up that video in particular where she mentioned that this person who had, again, killed her mom, shot her dad, and apparently, I guess, a police officer had gotten hurt or killed in the process as well, he'd been involved in this shooting, was going to be released. And she was in the video, again, it was very late at night, but it was clearly, filmed with her emotions in the moment. She was crying. I mean, it was hard to watch. It really was. The thing that occurred to me after thinking about that video, and it got me from the minute she was talking about, nobody would want that type of experience. Why that happened and why the government made that decision, I have no idea. Really none. It's just bizarre. And I know Washington State was not the only one, but if that's what the leadership is deciding to do, oh my word. It's like, who are we electing here? You know what I mean? Not to get political, but if that's the cost of what's happening, I don't know the outcome to that specific situation. I hope the guy got, I hope the person was told to stay in prison. Because I wouldn't say, if that's somebody with that type of mindset, and they still want to do that, don't put them, and they're not reformed, don't risk that at all, coming back out in the streets. I mean, we don't want that. No one wants to have their, loved ones die like that at all from such a tragic circumstance. But the thing that occurred to me in thinking about that circumstance, I'm like, where have I seen this before? Oh, Halloween of 2018. How interesting that this is like a almost perfect comparison. Not exactly. I mean, some of the details are different, but just look at the elements here. The fact that this woman had lost her mom very early on from this shooting. In Halloween, or actually, let me phrase it this way. We'll start with her case again, just some of the details. The fact that her mom had died in the midst of a shooting from this person that decided to take life in a very horrific way. Shouldn't have done that. It was horrible on his part. Horrible behavior. And then shot her, or injured her dad as well. Then got arrested with the insinuation that he would come back and finish the job if he ever got out. And then years later, because of government decisions, that prisoner could essentially be, released publicly and pose a threat to society. And, this woman happens to still be alive, right? And remember that ordeal. Now, consider Halloween of 2018. Well, actually branching off of 1978, because again, this is the continuity here. Laurie Strode, and the fact that she walked into her friend's apartment, her two friends and then the one girl's boyfriend, I guess, they're all dead. Of course, she's all freaked out. Then, Michael Meyers comes after her, stabs her in the back or whatever. And, she's all, and by the way, Jamie Lee Curtis's acting in that scene was so great. The crying, it was like, yeah, it really got me. It looked so realistic. But the fact that then she got stabbed, she got injured, and then eventually, they were able to get Michael Meyers over the edge of the balcony. Falls on the grass. She looks down, like clearly he's there. Goes a minute later. Oh, he's gone. Maybe subtly implying that years later, Michael Meyers could come back. And then 40 years later, look what happens. From amidst a prison transport, suddenly Michael Meyers is a public menace again. Do you see the comparison I'm making here? Except, I would say for Halloween, they were very generous with their years. 40 years. Yeah, still that's a lot more trauma. But the woman in question that I'm bringing the story up about from Washington State, 12 years, if I calculated right. 12 years. Even worse, quite frankly. But I was shocked when I came to the realization of this is actually realistic and true to life, but it makes me respect the movie a heck of a lot more for the realistic depiction. Now, I really hope, again, I would pray that, I don't remember the outcome of that case, if it did get public ire, and hopefully it should have. I know the video was like 8,000 views at the time. I hope that she got some resolution, that she was able to work, maybe with some of the governing agencies being like, hey, please keep this prisoner inside, and maybe some of the other dangerous people that we shouldn't be releasing in society. And by the way, I know from accounts from people I know in law enforcement that the arrest rates went up because, again, they released a lot of these prisoners on the street. I'm not surprised, because if these are repeat offenders, did you not think there'd be a problem? Like, who's making the decisions here again? Just confusing as heck to me. But, again, doesn't make any sense. What consciousness are they operating with in the Washington state government? I have no idea. But again, when it comes to the movie, the last thing I expected was to see that Halloween was actually more realistic in terms of its foresight than I thought it would be. But I have really appreciated this film nonstop. This only made me really want to watch the movie even more. I mean, just the fact that happened alone, the fact like this perfectly parallels Halloween, give or take, some circumstances within the story, and the year count. I'm really looking forward in anticipation to the new sequel. I really wanted to see it. The minute I realized that, I'm like, oh man, I can't tell you how much I respect this movie. I really do. The realism alone is just incredible. Let's take a look at this new, and I've been waiting a long time. I didn't mean to, it just got on the list for a while. Let's get a look at the new teaser that came out for Halloween Kills. I am so excited for the sequel. I really cannot wait. We're going to watch this first, and we're going to talk about it more in my condensed video ever. By the way, with Halloween, I mentioned that one scene in particular because, again, it was relevant to the parallel I was making. The fact that all those prisoners got out. Is that the sequel trilogy, or the sequel hook now, that it's not just Michael Myers that poses a public threat? Now it's all those other prisoners, because they could have all gone somewhere, right? They weren't on the bus. They were just strolling around town. Are these like the grounds for spin-off adventures to Halloween? For like Blumhouse Official, like we can make even more. I don't know. But I kept note of that scene. I'm like, that's an obvious choice. Something's going to happen. All right, let's take a look at this new teaser. Without further ado, I really can't wait to see some stuff from this movie. Here we go. Let's get a good look at this. It's a really short teaser, by the way, only 30 seconds. How ominous with the jack-o'-lantern. I remember jack-o'-lanterns, okay, that was kind of a violent scene, but they pose a looming threat. Ooh.
Yeah, it's okay. Oh no. No, 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 no. No! No, no, no! Oh, let it burn! Let it burn!
Brilliant move on their part. Okay, I wondered, like, how is Michael Myers going to escape? Because we saw the house burning, so I guess that takes place like right after the film, or the first chapter of it ends. And boy, they're not looking in the best of shape. By the way, it's not just Jamie Lee Curtis that's great in this movie. I forget the actress's name as playing the granddaughter, but she did a good job. But Judy Greer, holy cow, she's really good too. That whole, as I said, that end sequence at the end of the movie, and that played out so well. I mean, that was perfectly illustrated, and the way you're able to reference 1978 and the construction of that scene was just so incredible. But Judy Greer in that moment with the gun, like I can't do it. It's like she's got even the trauma here and the realistic portrayal of it. The fact that she's holding the gun, being like, I can't do this. It reminded like her of like a lot of her childhood dilemmas of her mom. And the fact her mom, has PTSD from this circumstance, but again, for good reason. Because Michael Myers, she knew she was safe, and she was absolutely right. But the fact she's saying, like, I can't do this, and Michael Myers is like, oh, I'm going to pray on the moment, stand there all ominous with my knife, and then she's like, gotcha. I was like, I didn't see it coming. It completely got me. And then, of course, Jamie Lee Curtis popping out in the background. Fabulous orchestration. I still love that scene. But clearly, we all knew a sequel was coming. Like, oh, Michael Myers ain't dead. If you don't see a body, he's not dead. And we saw at the end of the movie, like, he's burning at the house. And we know sequels are coming based on that Comic-Con announcement. How exactly does he survive? Well, so it's the rescue services and the first responders that try to save him? That's a brilliant twist of fate, but oh my gosh, I didn't expect that, but that makes perfect sense. Being like, I think it's actually really dark, but like, they're trying to do their civic duty, they're acting responsibly according to their job. What a flip. But bold move on terms of a story. I can't wait to see the resolution of that, being like, oh boy, so it's the emergency service's fault that now Halloween Kills is happening. Like, of course, the way Jamie Lee Curtis played that little scene too, by the way, and she's screaming, it sounded like she said, let it burn. Beautiful. I mean, again, like, because it should burn. Like, Michael Myers is trapped there. We don't want her to get hurt again. But all because the hospital and the doctors are trying to save someone hurting. Oh my gosh, and they don't know who it is. Brilliant twist. Brilliant setup on their part. Oh man, I tell you, anticipation is building in terms of watching this sequel. I love Halloween. I really, years ago, I didn't expect to have this take, and I do. I love this movie so much. What do you guys think about Halloween Kills? And by the way, that sequence, what do you think of that? That twist that now it's, the people that we would normally register in today's society as, oh, they're trying to save people, protect them and whatnot. Literally being the horrible twist of fate for Laurie Strode, the fact that Michael Myers is now released. Oh, my word, it's brilliant. Bold move. And I appreciate the crap out of it from Blumhouse. I told you, I respect this studio, and I love this property. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Don't forget to look at stuff like and sharing, the hitting that bell. And until we get to look at art, we have one more teaser to look at so far. I want to see more. I'm waiting for a trailer to come out like any day now, because it's mid-2021. You think they start advertising the movie soon, but until we get to look at that next trailer, I will see you guys at the point. But for now, thanks for watching this video. I love you guys. Don't forget to love yourselves, your fellow man. God bless, and peace.